great Tuesday evening, everybody. Chris McGall back in the saddle on a Tuesday night, the 27th day of May, 2025. Good to be back. We hope you all had a great Memorial Day. We're not feeling the best this weekend and took a night off last night, but we are back tonight with a vengeance. And it was good to see everybody in the morning Bible study this morning, and it's good to see you here tonight. All of you on Facebook, YouTube channel, our ex-followers, and Rumble tonight. And Israel in the Crosshairs, America in the balance, and no better person to bring in to discuss something like this than my dear buddy Jeemes Akers, and he's become a regular. Now, I don't know what it's doing to his reputation, but he hasn't complained that he's gotten any death threats or any kind of weird threats for being on my show. So I'm grateful he's still my friend after all this time. It's good to see you, buddy. How are you tonight on this Tuesday night?
I am doing fine. It's a pleasure being with you tonight.
We were talking the ins and outs of baseball, and I understand my Braves sort of took a shot at Bryce Harper tonight. That's okay. You know, we're not we're supposed to love everybody as Christians, but my love meter is tested on Bryce Harper, Akers. I'm just saying, you know, when it comes to baseball, him not getting a warm welcome is okay, but the Phillies have our number, looks like, tonight. But I do want to, reason I've got you on tonight, very serious situation. There's been a lot of reporting in the news, and we've got some stories we're going to share after we talk with our audience tonight. By the way, folks, please give me and James a little time to talk to each other. Save your questions and your comments, no paragraphs, and just listen. We'll take your questions at the end. We always give you a chance to chime in. We've got a poll up we want you to take tonight, and we'll get your input after the interview. But, James, it seems that Bibi Netanyahu and Trump, and again, you don't know what to believe in the press. You don't know what not to believe. But I know that Kristi Noem was in the Middle East over the weekend, and she met with Huckabee, and he met with Bibi. She met with Bibi directly, and she sort of said that it was a different kind of conversation because they're trying to keep Israel from attacking Iran right now because they're wanting to give diplomacy a chance on this nuke deal. And Bibi is strenuously telling Trump, look, we cannot wait. We don't have months here, you know, may not even have weeks, that these people are going to nuke up. And I heard tonight there was a report, I don't know how true it is, but it was not out of a left-wing source. This was out of Breitbart, that North Korea, it has been determined, has enough nuke material, James, for 90 warheads. Now, again, that's out there. I don't know how true that is. And again, that will be probably either confirmed by the U.S. State Department at some point. But those two scenarios is the world's nightmare, to have a nuked up Iran and a nuked up North Korea like that. That does not bode well for world peace. My question to you is, Bibi and Trump, do you think these stories are true? Do you think that we're on the same page with this? Or do you think this is just the media trying to meddle in something and we need to just let this play out? I don't see where Israel and America is too far apart. We both don't want Iran getting a nuke. It's just timing. And I think that I see Bibi's point. I see Trump's point. You know, and I love my country, but I think that we got to realize this is Israel's call ultimately because they're the ones under the greater threat.
Yeah, I agree. And there was a turning point of sorts a couple weeks ago when we were building up all of our assets in the region, and by all appearances, it looked like you know, we were going to join the Israelis and go in a major way with Iran.
Yes.
And then sort of without explanation, a lot of these units and the like came back, were pulled back, and we no longer have that forward staging presence, you know, and so the decision was reached, and I don't know if it was reached in concert between Trump and the Pentagon or how the decision was reached. But after that time, it seemed like there was sort of a drifting away from the Israeli hardline on Iran.
Yes.
And I think, of course, the mainstream media is, you know, that they're not going to do Netanyahu any favors, and they're not going to do Trump any favors. And so it's really hard to tell about the reliability of those reports. But I take more stock in that some of our units that would be the leading wave, you know, to knocking out everything that could be put up in the sky by the Iranians to slow down, you know, wave after wave of hitting them from the air. There was a change there, Chris.
Yes, it was.
I don't know exactly what it was. I don't know what caused it. I don't know whether it's sort of, and we have talked about this before, Trump giving into his instincts as a negotiator, or what. But definitely, the Israelis have been sort of put on the sideline. Netanyahu has his own problems inside of Israel these days with, the replacement of the intelligence head and this, that, and the other, and so and they've got their hands full in Gaza. I mean, they've pretty much taken over a huge part of Gaza, and of course, the world public opinion's coming down on them for all of that. So Israel's in a tough situation too to make a really decisive and bold decision to go in. So
okay, well, and I agree with everything you just said. I want to ask you a couple of questions though. In your opinion, look, I was told by maybe Brad even was the one that told me this in an interview. I know that we've had a few guests through the years that have talked about the Middle East, and one thing about these Iranians that's different from even Iraq, because Iraq and Iran fought each other because it's two sects of Islam, two different sects. But these Iranians have got a doomsday mentality, a complex, James. I don't think they care. I think that if we were dealing with normal people, even with Russia, I'll just use Russia as an example. There's always been this thing when you've talked about nuclear war that nations would not do it because nobody wins a nuclear war. I mean, if you shoot off your nukes, we're going to shoot off ours. You're going to have complete destruction on the planet. Nobody wins. Nobody, game over. There was a little movie back in 1982 called War Games, and this computer took over the nuke codes, and, it played chess, and the late Dabney Coleman, and I never will forget this movie. It came out when I was a junior in high school, and but it ultimately decided that nuclear war was unwinnable, no matter who started it and who finished it. But, and that's one reason I believe that the Russians and the Americans have never really tangled. China and America's never tangled like this. We came close to this with India and Pakistan, and I think cooler heads prevailed. You're dealing with people, though, that their hatred for Israel runs so deep, and their hatred for America runs so deep. And I don't know if it's a true hatred or if it's this, what I would call a cosmetic hatred to get what they want, which is money to spread more terrorism around the world, to negotiate. I love President Trump. I respect him. You cannot make deals with the devil. And that's my personal opinion. I know he's trying to keep us out of wars. I know he's trying to do everything he can to make sure we don't get involved and embroiled in something. But James, sometimes, look, it's not us starting this. It ain't like we're going over there picking a fight. They're picking this fight. And I'm not sure if these people care about mutual destruction. I think they're just like, because that's the difference in the Iranians and all other enemies that we've ever faced. And I even feel that way about North Korea to a degree. I don't think Kim Jong-un, even though he's got 90 warheads, as crazy a nut as he is, he knows he will not, his nation will be a puff of smoke if he dares fire one of those nukes off. Iran don't care. What's your opinion on that?
For years, we went, for lack of a better term, in the intelligence community when it came to these types of issues, we went by a reasonable man theory. That is, the Soviets may have a much different ideology than we had, but that basically reasonable men were at the helm, and reasonable men do not launch a nuclear war that's going to result in their own destruction. But that's a Western notion, and of course, Russia is always trying to decide in its own inner psyche, whether it is a Western or an Eastern nation. But we were on comfortable grounds. The whole doctrine of mutual mass destruction, sort of put both sides into a certain reasoning chamber. That chamber and the rules that applied to that chamber, the rules that apply to reasonable men making decisions, I would suggest breaks down when you're talking about the mullahs.
Absolutely. Come on.
They are not guided by Western standards of reasonableness.
They're not.
In fact, they're as you well know, their end time theology depends on a worldwide war and chaos into which the Mahdi
rises up,
is going to step in and show how reasonable he is and how powerful he is, and convert the whole world basically
to Islam.
To Islam. And so it is in their benefit in terms of their theology, I would argue. There would be others that would argue the other way. I would argue sets the stage for what we are seeing. If they acquire a nuclear weapon, they are not going to behave as reasonable men expect them to behave in the West. That's not their mentality.
That's a great point.
And the same thing in North Korea. Of course, I'm gonna tongue in cheek. If North Korea loads all of their nuclear weapons on boats that they try to launch, then they'll probably go right to the bottom of the ocean.
That is true. Yes.
But your point is well taken. The leader of North Korea does not operate according to a reasonable man theory that prevails in the West. That's been the cornerstone of our doctrine when it comes to nuclear strategy since the end of World War II. And now, all of a sudden, on the scene, I would argue that the Chinese leaders are probably reasonable actors.
To a degree, yes.
That may switch, and the switch point is going to be Taiwan. When they figure that the benefits outweigh the risk, then they're going to annex Taiwan in their thinking, and at that point that theory breaks down because of those very long standing geostrategic types of issues. But today you have Iran, which we cannot trust anything they say. They're having trouble keeping their own people in line, and it's just total repression there, and in their minds they have everything to gain by just throwing a monkey wrench into all sorts of diplomacy in the region. And now you have the Saudis, and Trump is trying to negotiate with the Saudis, but and the Gulf Kingdom states and Jordan as well, and but I would argue that this recent trip to the Middle East was primarily, you can say I'm crazy about this, but was primarily directed towards getting financial backing so that we could proceed with AI and keep ahead of China.
Right, and that may be true. I think that, and I think that's what left a lot of people stunned, because he didn't visit Israel, and I don't think that was taken. I mean, it was definitely not missed by the media, and it wasn't missed even by right wing media. I do want to ask you a question though, and if you were Bibi Netanyahu tonight, and again, we don't know what Bibi's thinking. He's the Prime Minister of Israel. We're Americans, and America can only suggest things to Israel. I understand. I mean, one of the Israeli papers, World Israel News, said there was a shouting match on the phone between him and Trump the other day, just a few days ago. And Kristi Noem even alluded to that. She said that, we've been friends with Bibi a long time, but we've had to talk straight. This is how we stand. The tenor toward Israel has changed over the last few days. And I think that America is sincerely scared. But James, if you put yourself in Bibi's place, what does he do? He cannot wait till these people get nuked up and then hope. Because see, what I'm hearing, and I'm just playing devil's advocate a little bit, there is no indication. Trump has had 5 meetings with these mullahs, 5, okay? Every meeting, they have rejected outright his demand to stop building nuclear waste material. They have said, no, that's a no-brainer. We're not going to stop trying to get enriched uranium. Well, if they're not going to stop getting enriched uranium, I mean, with that enriched uranium, you can't build a nuclear bomb. And Trump is trying to keep him from that. And see, this is what got Obama in trouble, because we felt like dropping $150 billion on the tarmac in cash would keep him from getting enriched uranium. And all it did was spread terrorism for freaking 4 years. And I'm just afraid that somebody is giving Trump some pretty bad advice here. And I'm not saying that Israel's perfect in this, and I'm not saying Israel is making the right call. I don't know what I would do if I was Bibi. I think Bibi's in a far worse place than Trump is on this, because Bibi's got to protect a nation, James, that's the size of Rhode Island against a nation that's 6 times its size. And it's a little different issue over there tonight than it is here. Because what we're trying to do is play peacemaker. Bibi's trying to survive.
Yeah. There's very much of a difference. Bibi's on he's sort of hooked on the horns of the dilemma here. Number one, he has to protect his own political equities within the Israeli political system, which is, he's in many respects hanging on by his fingernails there. And the reality of the situation is, as much as Netanyahu would like to go in to Iran with Israeli aircraft, they cannot do it without U.S. tankers and other support.
That's true.
Nor can they do it without obtaining overflight permission from the Saudis and the Gulf Kingdom
and Iraq, yeah.
And so Trump is holding those cards at what he perceives to be the negotiating table. Israel can't go in on its own and do the job. It needs our help in order to do the job. And so that's the strategic reality of the situation. It doesn't matter how dire the situation gets in Iran. If Trump, the great negotiator, thinks that there's a chance to come out of it with a deal, he's not going to give Bibi a blank check to go into Iran.
I know that, and that's what makes it hard.
My view.
I'm with you on that, and that would be my view too. But my question to you is an opinion question too. How far do you think Bibi can stand not doing before it's too late? Do we wait too late? What happens? Let me rephrase the question totally. What happens if Trump's negotiations fail? As much as I respect Trump, Trump's not God. I know he's trying his best. But again, you're not dealing with normal people here. You're dealing with a terrorist state, not just terrorists. You're dealing with a terrorist state that has been the sponsor of world terrorism, Jeemes, for 20 years, going back really to 1979. And they've got the blood of millions of people on their hands, thousands at least, and pretty much thousands of Americans throughout the last three decades, not centuries, but three decades, going back to 1979. And brother, I'm telling you something. We're dealing with a snake here, and I know our people are listening tonight, and I know there's some out there that's listening and say, "Well, why in the world are y'all talking about this? We got more domestic things to talk about. We got Hunter Biden's cocaine investigation being reopened, and we got all this stuff going on in D.C. Why are y'all even worried about Israel?" Let me tell you why, folks. Because if this goes bad, and we have a conflict of this size in the Middle East, whether they find the solution of who planted cocaine in the White House with Hunter Biden is going to be the least of your worries and mine. And I think we better realize that this is what is brewing right now, because it is a legitimate danger to national security. I believe it is, James. Maybe I'm overstating it. Maybe I'm a little naive tonight. But it is important. And I'm wondering what's Bibi's plan B if this don't work? What is Trump's plan B if negotiating with the mullahs don't work? What does he do? What would you do?
Well, here is my concern. What if the Israeli cabinet and Bibi decide, we're no longer certain we can depend on the United States whatsoever, and we're going to go ahead and do what we can. And we're going in there and we're going to force Trump's hand. He is going to have to help us. I think there may be that decision point in Jerusalem at some point, and that's my concern there, that the Israelis completely lose confidence in the United States and they decide the heck with it. We're going in there. We've got to take care of this problem best way we can.
Yeah.
And that then puts the United States in really an awkward and tough position. And you have none of this stuff is taking place in a vacuum. At the same time, all of these overtures to Putin in Russia look like they've completely failed.
They have.
Putin is not backing down. In fact, he has stepped up the offensive. He senses weakness in the Western alliance, and so you have there Trump having to return to a decision he didn't want to make.
I know,
which is supporting the Ukrainians and the Europeans. He thought he had put that to bed, and that he could convince Putin to come to the negotiating table. Putin's not going to do it. And at the same time, he thought he could speak reasonableness to the Iranian leaders and get them to see some sort of common sense. They're not going to do it. And so it's a very dangerous world that's out there right now. And in terms of our national security, if things go up in the Middle East, then all bets are off, because we have anything but a united American public to back if we have to go into the Middle East in force. Can you imagine what's going to go on in the streets?
James, people would riot in the streets. I'm telling you something, this nation will go up in smoke. I mean, not so much in smoke, but I tell you what will happen. The anti-war people are going to go nuts. And I hate to say this, the anti-Semitic wing of this country, the college campuses are going to go crazy. You're going to have everybody swearing up and down Israel has paid Trump to go fight their wars for him. The anti-Semitic vile ranting will just triple. It's already quadrupling tonight. I've never seen so much vile individuals. I've never seen so much vile talk coming from the mouths of Christians that should be ashamed of themselves for the things they say about Israel. And it's not coming from just, again, the media. This is coming from church figures. And I think that if this was to happen, with people not understanding what is at stake here, and again, I think what people don't get, James, is after they're done with Israel, okay, let's just say Iran, which I know the Lord's hand is on Israel, and Iran's not going to destroy Israel no matter what they think they're going to do. They're not going to destroy her. They're going to think they can. But I will tell you this, it's not Israel they just want. It's not just Israel they want. They want us destroyed too. And if we don't think that this terrorism is not coming to our shore, and we don't think that this stuff is coming here, we're fools. We're just plain fools. Because that is what they ultimately want. It's not just submission to Israel or of Israel. They want submission of the entire global world. The West, the East, the South, and the North. And they're not going to be happy until the world bows down at the altar of Allah and the altar of Sharia. And until we submit ourselves to that, they're always going to be at war with us. And this war is going to be ongoing for up until the time Jesus Christ steps foot back in Jerusalem. And that's part of the narrative of the Bible. It's part of the Islamic narrative. It's part of the Christian narrative. And it's all coming to a head. But I just think that politically speaking right now, it's one of the, I put it like this, Trump's going to earn his keep as negotiator on this one. And I think that when you said what you said about Israel losing patience with America, I hope that's not the case. I hope that we can always feel like they can depend on America, but I do sense a shift in that, and I don't think that we're walking lock and step with each other like we used to, and I don't know how good or bad that is. I would tend to lean on bad, because they're our only ally over there, man. It ain't like, and I love Trump, and I know he went over there and got a lot of economic promises from Saudi, but the Saudis are not our friends. Qatar is not our friends. Yemen is not our friends. The United Arab Immigrants are not our friends. Nobody's our friend over there. Nobody. I don't care what they're handing out and cotton candy we're handing to them. I mean, the friend of my friend is my enemy, or enemy of my enemy is my friend. It may work for the Saudis, but we're a Western culture. We're a Western civilization. And we better come to grips with this, that we've got no friends over there but one. And even though the world is telling us that Israel's our enemy.
Yeah, and we are in the process of alienating our only friend in the region. It is tough times, and I do not envy Trump's task with all of these things. All of these trouble spots are bubbling up at one time. At the same time, we have never been as divided as the nation as we are right now, not since Civil War. And so, it would be a tall order for a president who had enjoyed the consensus of the people to make a decision when it comes to very important strategic decisions abroad. And Trump does not have that luxury. And I'm telling you, it's going to be an interesting ride ahead.
How concerned are you that this escalates, buddy? As a friend, just meeting you, friend to friend, how concerned are you that this escalates into something major? Do you think that cooler heads are going to prevail here? Do you think Israel's going to back down and say, okay, we'll give the United States a chance? I mean, or what's your gut on this?
My gut on it is that within a year to 2 years, I think we're going to see major conflict in the Middle East. That does not mean that I don't think there aren't a number of people that will try their best to keep that from happening. But if I was to wager, I would say within in fact, in my writings, I say it by 2030, there's going to be a completely strategic realignment.
Yeah. I've heard that.
There's going to be, and we are leaving out of the discussion one of the most important pieces, and that is technical change. You know, technology, AI is just increasing at such a rapid rate that Ray Kurzweil in a conference a couple weeks ago, said by 2030 that human beings will be on the verge of immortality because of changes that are going to take place in AI. And so you have the leading futurists all talking about major changes. I mean, a black swan type change occurring by 2035, and all of it will be led by an increasing technology. And right now, we only know we're approximately 5 years behind what the Pentagon has in its research labs. So in terms of AI being employed on the battlefield, and it'll have a major role in the Middle East. It'll have a major role in any cross-straits scenario in East Asia. And we're just seeing the beginning of it in this Ukrainian war. Things are
That's very true.
Things are changing so fast, and it has to have an effect on the strategic decision making, and we never talk about that angle.
It's very true, James.
And I think that's one of the very most important things that is going to happen over the next 4 or 5 years ahead.
Quick question.
It will come to play in the Middle East in a huge way, because up to now, Israel has had a clear technological advantage in the Middle East when it has to go to war against its neighbors. It'll have a technological advantage if it goes into Iran, but it will not last long.
It's a good point. That's an excellent point.
Saddam Hussein had a technological advance over the Iranians when he went to war with the Iranians. They don't care how many people they lose, and so it was just wave after wave that he just used up his weapons, and the Iranians were able to battle him to a standstill. And so that's the problem in the Middle East. Israel, with its technological advantage, only has a narrow window of time to achieve what it needs to achieve.
Do you before I forget this,
part of the planning process.
Before I get we're gonna go, I got to ask you a few questions. By the way, folks, if you got a question now for Jeemes, you can put those in the house real quick. But let me stay on the Middle East one more minute or two, and then we're going to go to some domestic things I'm going to ask you about. Do you think Syria and Iraq stay out of this? Because we didn't mention them, and they're Israel's neighbors. And I read a report tonight. One of the byproducts, World Israel News, was reporting that Iraq is sort of stirring up the flames. And this is one of those enemy, my enemies, my friends, because Iran and Iraq can't stand each other. But there are rumblings that Iraq is saber rattling, basically telling Iran, whatever you need us to do to help, we're going to help you do what we have to do to get Israel off the planet. And Syria is now with overtones of peace, of all things, to Israel. And there's so many sects of Syria that is involved here because of this jihadism that is there. You don't know who's in charge anymore. And after Bashar al-Assad got, tanked, and the Biden administration basically led to his overthrow, and then you got this jihadist government in place. Look, if I was Israel, I wouldn't trust a thing the Syrians are saying. I wouldn't trust a thing anybody's saying to me in the Middle East right now. But I tell you, Jeemes, her circle of friends is zilch, and I don't think she can trust anybody right now. But I'm concerned that Syria and Iraq are not going to sit on the sidelines if this goes bad.
Well, there's another factor when I was watching the Middle East, and it's probably the most important factor, is the Shia-Sunni divide.
Yes.
They can agree for a short period of time to hate Israel, but that's about the only thing they agree on. They hate each other otherwise. In Iraq, you talked about Iraq. Iraq has a significant Shia minority, and that's all of these groups that sponsor, shooting off things at American bases and this, that, and the other. All of that's Shia. And the reality of the Middle East is that at the same time that you have all of these people hating Israel, they don't trust each other. And so, you're not going to have the Saudis really ever support the Iranians. You're not going to have the Gulf Kingdom Sunnis
very true
support the Iranians, and that's another sort of unknown factor that's involved in all of this calibration and calculation that we try to impose on the Middle East. Well, they'll all conform to sort of Western type rules of war and diplomacy. No, they have them. I described in Washington as they have their own dance. These people have been doing this for hundreds of years. They have their own dance. It has its own rhythm. It has its own red lines. And the people of the region have an intuitive understanding of that. We do not. In the Western world, we have no concept of the rules of that dance.
That's a great point.
And we are trying to impose now the logic of and you know where I stand on Trump. He's the alternative to me was unthinkable.
Absolutely.
So I'm support Trump for that reason, but to impose sort of a real estate psychology of negotiation on these Middle East kingdoms that have been dancing to this dance for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's I'm wishing well, and I hope he succeeds. But I'm telling you, that is a long uphill battle to fight.
Well, I'm with you 1,000,000% on that, spiritually speaking. I do want to ask you about some things domestically. I don't know if you heard about this event in Seattle over the weekend. Christians were worshiping, having a service, and we had basically a group of Antifa, Islamic jihadists, Black Lives Matter, anarchists basically busted the event up. A lot of people were hurt. The city of Seattle, instead of basically being upset with the jihadists and the Antifa members, the mayor comes out, blames the Christians for inciting the violence. And I found that so offensive. And the pastors, one of the pastors, young kid of the church that was in charge of it, Ricky Wilson, our dear friend, her mother lives in Seattle, and she was telling me tonight that people were actually hurt in that, and the media is not reporting that, but there were actually people that was bloodied up in this pretty good. And Jeemes, where are we at as a nation right now, man? I mean, where are we at when we are basically calling evil good and good evil? Because, all the Christians were doing was just having a church service, from what I understand. And look, they've got a right to make a statement as to what they believe with faith, just like everybody else does. And, I was telling somebody, I mentioned this, where was I talking about this today? Maybe on the radio. I made the statement today, look, we Christians, we have a right to say what we want to say. We don't, I know what it was. I was getting a haircut, and the young lady was talking, she had a 6-month-old child, and we were talking about the world that we live in. And she seemed to understand faith, and she was telling me how scared she was to put her kid in public school, and she said that her and her husband was going to probably put the kid in homeschooling. And I said, well, that's a good idea. And I said, my son does the same thing with my 4 beautiful grandchildren. And I said, I wouldn't no more put my kid in public school than me become a Reds fan. No, I'd become a Reds fan. I would do that before I become a Phillies fan or a Dodgers fan. But seriously though, but you know, James, when you think about it, we Christians, we don't impose our beliefs on others. We have a right though to stand for our beliefs and express those beliefs if we're asked. And if we're standing on a street corner and we're telling people that Jesus saves and Jesus heals and Jesus died on the cross for your sins, I hate to tell these God haters, we got a right to say that. We got a right to say that, just as they've got a right to declare Ali Akbar. If that's what they want to believe, let them believe it. But they can't impose their will against us no more than we do against them, because Christians don't do that. True Christians don't. But that's what is happening. And this event in Seattle was so ugly the way it was handled. And then the mayor to come out and again, not condemn the violence against the Christians. He condemned the Christians, claiming they incited the violence of the jihadists. Where are we at as a nation on this, man?
Well, I view it through a slightly different prism. That it's obvious from the word that as we approach end times and the closer we get to the end, there is going to be an absolute spirit of lawlessness that takes over.
I'm with you.
We are just seeing the beginnings of that, not only in this country, but in places around the world. And it's that spirit of lawlessness that is going to grow. The question then becomes how we as Christians operate in a world then that is full of lawlessness, you know, and we have, you know, do you remember Keith Green?
Yes.
From the old days.
I do.
Loved his music, and he had a saying that going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than going to McDonald's makes you a hamburger.
So that's a good analogy, James, except for the name. But go ahead. Yeah, that's true. I'm not a hamburger. Go ahead.
And we have in this country so many people that are calling themselves Christians, and they have no idea
what it means
of what happened at the cross of Christ.
Bingo.
They have no
Bingo.
idea. They do not conduct their lives in accordance with the scriptural admonitions that Christ made, and then they sort of want everything. Almost like with a spiritual inertia, they want everything to work out. It's not going to. It's just not going to. That spirit of lawlessness is going to grow. And unless there is a genuine revival in this country among Christians, you know, that spirit's going to just take over. It's demonic in nature, and it's just going to keep growing.
We're on the same page with that.
And so that's the way I view what's happening.
No, we view the same.
These incidents that involve Christian churches, whether they be in this country or whether they are burned down in Canada, where scores of churches are being burned down, where Christians are forced to go underground in China, or else put a picture of Xi Jinping up on the at the front of the church. All of these things are meant, in my view, to divide and for for Christians to really stand for something. And we are going to be forced to make a stand. You're not going to be able to be lukewarm anymore. You're not going to be able to,
That's right, James.
to exist in the world
That's right.
and operate by the world's rules anymore. If you are going to be a Christian, it's going to cost you something. And with it, God's going to equip his people at the same time. And so, you know, we are just, by the nature of being those that are on planet Earth at the end of days, you know, we are going to see these things happen. And the real choice and job is for us to remain true to the faith, no matter what's happening around us.
Couldn't say it better, man. I got a couple of great questions for you. A couple of them come out of Facebook tonight. Corey Aguilar, and she says, do you think if Israel were to launch an attack on Iran, is there a possibility that China and Russia would seize the opportunity to strike us simultaneously, aiming to overwhelm our defenses and prevent us from supporting Israel? That's not a bad question. I don't think they'd be that stupid, but you know, we live in such weird times right now. I'm not gonna say they won't. I don't think they'd be that dumb, but you never know, James. I mean, her point's well taken. I mean, because we are in a dangerous world. You said it a while ago, and I mean, I think all bets are off right now. I think that we better recognize we have enemies. Look, this report tonight out of Breitbart that is stating, and actually World Israel News, that the North Koreans have got 90 warheads. That's a lot, man. I mean, that if those warheads could hit the United States, you'd have cataclysmic destruction on our nation.
Yeah, but that assumes that they have the
capability to shoot them off.
The sophisticated guidance system
that
actually hit what they're aiming at. To your listener's question, I think Russia has its hands full right now. I'm not sure it's going to intervene any place.
Right.
Its plate is running over with issues dealing with Ukraine, and they have suffered tremendous losses. About the only thing they have as a leverage piece on the chess table is basically their nuclear weapons, because their conventional capabilities have been shredded and basically stretched beyond what they had ever planned, and logistic problems and this, that, and the other. So I would rule out Russia in that scenario that your listener suggested. China, for the present time, China is benefiting by just playing the game and the way they're playing it. They're playing it for the long run. They're not going to do anything, in my view, that's going to cause a reaction of any sort from the United States until, and I think this is coming in the next 5 to 10 years, until they decide, and Xi has said that it's going to happen during his years in office, until they decide that they have overwhelming force and with minimal risk that they can take Taiwan. And I don't see that happening.
Not now. Yeah, not now. Good question. Do you think that, and I got an interesting comment, and I'll just read it to you, and I see the gentleman's point. He said, in World War II, the Europeans abandoned Czechoslovakia, forced Czechoslovakia to give up fortified Sudet area. If they insisted then, there might not have been a World War II. If they would have resisted, I guess is what he said. People act for peace. Sometimes causes war. And he says, to me, Israel giving up land for peace is creating global jihad. And I think that's an old argument. And I see your point, sir, because I understand, because that's really what happened in World War II, James. The world did not believe Hitler. They believed Hitler overtures of peace to Europe, and he said, if you'll give me Czechoslovakia, I'll leave you alone. What happens? We gave him Czechoslovakia. He invaded Poland the next day. And I think that the man's point, Mr. Lucid, your point is well taken. Look, Israel cannot, under any circumstances, give up any more land than she has. And I think that she's learned her lesson. I think this Gaza incident of October the 7th has been an eye-opening experience for the world and Israel, but especially Israel. You're not dealing with people that want you to coexist with them. You're dealing with people that want your destruction. And the West had better, I love what you said a while ago. I'm going to capsule that on a little clip because, James, I think you nailed it a while ago. You've said a lot of wise things on this program, but what you said a while ago about the West not understanding this dance is going to get the whole world blown to smithereens because we're not dealing with conventional people. Carol Smith, your point is well taken too. You know, past wars up until even the Iraqi war, even the last conflict we've had has all been fought with conventional weapons. We've not had a nuclear exchange ever, you know, other than World War II when Harry Truman used the bomb to end that war. It wasn't a part of the war, it was to end the war. And it's never been used since. But if this nuke factor comes in, buddy, the Middle East changes. And the West better come to grips with this. And I think his point is well taken that what Israel is willing to give up for peace is going to be the noose around her neck. She don't need to give up anything for peace right now. She better be willing to stand and fight. I mean, look, I hate to say this. I love President Trump. In this matter, I believe Bibi Netanyahu has a right to defend his people. We cannot tell him how to do that. We can suggest, and if we feel like he's standing in the way of some grandiose nuke deal that may or might not happen, I understand Bibi's anxiety over that, James, and I believe he's got to do what he's got to do to defend Israel. That's my opinion. What say you about this?
I think I agree. We cannot expect in the name of whatever. We cannot expect Bibi to become Neville Chamberlain.
Come on, buddy. Come on.
We cannot demand that of him. He has no room for mistake. If the war goes wrong against Israel, his entire people perish. They are not over there to play patty cake. They are there by their own doctrine, by their own theology, by their own religious teaching to drive them into the sea. Even at the end of time, when the Mahdi comes in, there's the famous hadith. There'll be a Jew hiding behind a tree, and the people will tell him about it, and they will be killed without question. It is a demonic, bloodthirsty religion.
Come on.
Period. It was born out of the desert sands. It's demon powered, and we cannot impose our. I've got a good friend, bless his heart. He traveled to the region and gave me a book, and it's by a Palestinian, and it's this whole idea that if everybody would just sit down, sing Kumbaya, and sit at the same table, there could be peace forever in the Middle East. When those people sit down at the same table, it just reinforces how much they hate each other because it's a spiritual hatred. And we try to impose sort of a Western common sense, well, they ought to understand what the other side thinks. That does not apply to spiritual warfare and battle in the spiritual realm. And at root, all of this is a spiritual battle that has gone on for centuries.
Pat and Deb Dolan, final question for you tonight, and it's a statement, and I'll let you sort of wrap us up on this, and I think their point is well taken as well. They say that with Russia pushing hard in Ukraine, not really moving, and Iran the plan with Iran not really moving with anything. Does you think that this is a coordinated front between Russia and Iran to tie Trump in Israel's hands? Not a bad question. And I think what they're asking is, do you think that the Russian and Iranians are working behind the scenes to watch Putin may be stalling and doing what he's doing to sort of put a monkey wrench in what Trump and them's trying to do in the Middle East? Because what you said a while ago is true too, buddy. He's got his hands full right now. He's fighting. He's dealing with two major conflicts. One's already happening. One's about to happen if something don't break here soon.
Yeah, no, the question of they have a strategic partnership. The question of whether Russia is acting in concert with the Iranian leadership in terms of its war strategies and this, that, and the other. There may be a small degree of that, but I think Russia is acting on its own for demographic and other reasons. It decided to act in the Ukraine, and so it's basically a Putin operation. I don't care how many representatives the mullahs send to Moscow or to St. Petersburg. They're not going to have a seat at the table to sway Putin's war strategy plans in the slightest.
I'll agree. No, I'll agree, buddy. I'm with you there. Man, I tell you what, this hour sure does go about fast when you're on. And I could have you on every night if we could get you on. I tell you, I enjoy these discussions and talks, and I think you outdid yourself tonight. I will keep you on speed dial if the world goes up in smoke. We may have to call you back the way the world is, buddy. But I do appreciate you coming on this Tuesday night. Listen, I'm going to give you 3 or 4 minutes. Wrap us up. Final thoughts. I've got some things I'm going to share with the people here tonight on the second part of the show tonight. But I want to thank everybody for those good questions. By the way, Trump's approval rating hit 52% tonight, meaning the first time in Rasmussen history, people are saying that the country's on the right track. Or do you feel like the country's on the right track with Trump under his leadership?
I do personally. If the people, the decision makers, and the media, and this, that, and the other would just give him a chance.
I'll agree.
I think several of his strategies will work out. We called into question some of his strategies in the Middle East tonight, but that's not any reflection of the lack of confidence in Trump, and it certainly isn't a reflection of what the situation we could have been in. Can you imagine if Kamala Harris had been faced with all these problems at the same time?
Brother.
That's my opinion.
No,
let me wrap it up the way I always do, Chris. And, God has a way of dealing with nations of the world and with individuals. And with individuals, what matters is whether you've accepted the blood of Christ. It's just that simple. That's the basis for an individual living successfully in this life and in the life to come. And we have been talking about all these strategies involving nations. All of those things operate in a different realm in the kingdom of God.
Absolutely, buddy.
But for us as individuals in these troubled times, I would encourage you, as all the listeners, to draw closer to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That is what is going to rescue you from the fears and lawlessness that is to come.
Yeah. Buddy, I appreciate your time tonight, and I'll be in touch with you. God bless you. I'll see you soon this summer, and looking forward to seeing you in person again very soon, my friend. Love you, man. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. You're a dear friend. always bring wisdom to the show. And we cannot tell you thank you enough from our McFiles family to you for your insight tonight, Jeemes. I really appreciate it, man.
I always enjoy it, Chris. This phone's never far from me. Anytime you need me to venture opinion, I am absolutely flattered that anybody cares what I think about it.
Well, don't tell me the phone is never not from your side. And when you're on a beach with siesta and drinking, your cocktails or whatever, and the ocean breeze, and the phone rings and it says McDonald, I know that phone goes into the sand, and your wife and you laugh and say, we'll let McDonald call us back another time, but I'm just messing with you there. Bless you, buddy. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay.
Bless your friend. Have a good night. Jeemes Akers, everybody. Put some fire in that house for him. I tell you, that man outdid himself tonight. That was some good stuff. Very, very good stuff tonight, and I appreciate him coming on tonight. Listen, it's right at 10:07 in the East. I want to go over a few quick things tonight, and we're going to take some more of your comments tonight. It's great to have you tonight. We needed the rest yesterday. We had a pretty rough weekend. For those of you that know, we were sick as a dog Saturday night going into Sunday, and thanks to my nurse, Nurse McDonald, she helped get me back to speed for tonight, and appreciate my wife, Kathy. Love her. She did a very jam-up job getting me back to where I need to be tonight to come on the show. We had a good Bible study this morning. Janet, your question, I did not ignore your question on purpose. I would prefer that question to be asked. If you can come join us in the morning, we'll talk about the future of Bible prophecy. We've been talking about that in our morning Bible studies between 10 and 11. It's too complicated to get into tonight. Will nuclear weapons be used in the end times? I'm almost certain that some of the things that Joel saw and John described were probably nuclear exchanges between nations, and I don't doubt that nuclear war will be part of these wars that are coming after the rapture of the church. But I'd rather talk about that on our Faith Show in the morning, if you don't mind, friends. Good to see you tonight. Thank you for asking the question. It's not the question that's the problem. I do want to mention tonight a couple of stories that, and I really didn't have time to get into this with James because it was really more about Iran tonight. I'm very concerned, folks, about this developing situation, and I see a lot of things converging. I see a lot of things coalescing. They can go either way. And I know a lot of you are Christians out there that listen to us. We've got a very strong faith-based audience, and I'm proud of that. We've got some folks out there that are not as faith-based as others, and we love you guys just as much as we love our whole audience. We've got a very unique audience, probably more unique than anybody out there. But I know those of you that pray, you need to pray for your country tonight. You need to pray for wisdom, great wisdom for President Trump. You need to pray that his advisors are giving him wise counsel. I don't know if you know this or not. I'm going to come over here tonight, but tonight is the actual anniversary of the St. Louis. And somebody will say, well, what in the world is the St. Louis? Well, the St. Louis is a story that many are not aware of. And in fact, I thought I had it saved here on my favorites, and I don't. But let's see here. If you'll give me 1 minute here. This is the ship that came to from. I'll just give you the simple and short of it. There was a ship. This happened tonight, back all the way in 1939, May 27th, 1939. In fact, I'll just put this little summary up for you right here. This may help sort of sum it up. And I do appreciate all the questions. We're going to take a few more of these before we close tonight. But there was about 930 refugees that had left Europe because of the rising anti-Semitism that they saw happening in Europe. And in an effort to save as many as they could and to flee Nazi Germany, 930 Jewish refugees, they were all Jewish, they sailed from Hamburg on May the 15th, 1939, at the St. Louis. They reached Havana, Cuba tonight on this date, and that would be, what would that be, 60, 70, today's 2025, 76 years ago tonight. Yes, 86 years ago, actually. Yes, 86, because it's 2025. 86 years ago tonight. Hard to believe it's going on 100 years. Arrangements for the voyage were organized independently by the Hamburg American Line without the involvement of any Jewish organizations. These people were fleeing Nazi Germany, and they docked outside the waters of Cuba, begging to get in. The reason they had to dock in Cuba, you can thank the Franklin Delano Roosevelt anti-Semitic government for that, because the Jews were sending messages to their relatives here, their relatives here in America, was begging the Roosevelt White House to let their loved ones in because they knew what they were fleeing. This was at the start of the tensions rising. The night of Kristallnacht, which was the night of broken glass, had already taken place in November of the year previous, 1938. Which really people look to and historians believe was the official start of the Holocaust. It was really the start of Hitler's efforts to destroy the Jewish nation, both in Germany and the whole of Europe. And the dear friend in the chat tonight about the pseudonym, this took place the same year that the Czechoslovakia, this is right around the time that Czechoslovakia was annexed, and Neville Chamberlain gave Germany Czechoslovakia. And Chamberlain, in his weakness, didn't think Hitler was that evil. He thought he could negotiate with Hitler. Well, these Jews that were fleeing knew better. They saw what was happening. They saw the anti-Semitism. They saw many of their loved ones being beaten, some of them taken away, some of them were even killed. The synagogues were being burned. Jewish businesses were being confiscated. Jewish businesses were being burned. Families were being tormented, people being taken in the middle of the night. And they said, we've got to get out of here. They left Germany, they fled, and they came to Cuba because America would not take them. There are stories, and I don't doubt it, that one of the telegraphs that was sent from the captain of the St. Louis, there's a movie, James Mason stars as the captain. It's a great movie. And it's called The Voyage of the Damned. And it's about this very cruise liner. And they sent a telegraph message at that time is how we communicated. And it went to the Roosevelt White House. And I don't know this to be 100% true, but knowing what I know about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, it sort of makes sense that it would have happened that Eleanor took that wire from that captain and wadded it up and threw it in the trash can. FDR never saw it. And when the ship made a jaunt into Miami, it was trying to disembark these 939 souls that were simply looking for safety. Simply looking for safety. Now, I know the question has been asked by historians, well, why did Hitler let him go? I'll tell you why in a minute. Because the same thing's happening tonight. See, Hitler knew that he could not just, in cold blood, murder 6 million Jews and the world stand by and watch. At least he didn't think they would. This was a test. This was a test to how the world felt, about the Jewish people. You got to realize they were not a nation at this time. This was before Israel became a nation, reformed in 1948. Israel did not become a nation in 1948. She was reformed as a nation in 1948. But these 939 souls, and when the ship made a jaunt north, when Cuba wouldn't take them, they tried to the United States, and they were told by the Coast Guard of the United States of America, if you come any further, we're going to blow your ship out of the water. And they went to Cuba. Cuba turned them away. They turned to Haiti. Haiti said, I tell you what, we'll let you disembark, but they extorted the Jewish families. And I think 20 or 30 of them got off at almost millions of dollars in today's economy they had to pay just for their freedom and safety. The families had to. Not everybody had that kind of money on that ship. It was extortion, blood money, blood libel. You want to know why Haiti's under a curse tonight? You know why voodoo and the dark magic run rampant in Haiti? Little bit of Jewish tie to that. little bit of Jewish tie, and it's not what you anti-Semitic, vile demons think. No, they cursed Israel that day by doing what they did. Cuba cursed Israel in doing what they did. The Dominican Republic wouldn't let him come. And when the captain had tried every country he knew, he was on the phone frantically to Franklin Delano, please, 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 I got 939 Jews. If we go back to Germany, they're going to perish. And they went back. They had to go back because they couldn't find a place to put just 939 Jews. Now, I got a reason for saying that number. 939. Out of that 939 Jews, less than 100 of them survived the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. We basically condemned close to 900 Jews to their death by what we did that day. On this day in history, on this day, May 27th, 1939, this was when this took place. You would think that after 86 years we would have learned a lesson. To see, this ship was Israel's, that was Hitler's test to the world as to what the world would do if he stood by. Would they stand by? And if they wouldn't take 939 in, then Hitler took a gamble that it wouldn't matter to the world if he gassed 6 million of them. Can I tell you it didn't? It didn't matter. The world stood by and watched them do it. The blood of these Jews, folks, that perished in that Holocaust are on the hands of many nations tonight, including this one. Now, we don't have to agree with that. You can say that's a little naive, McDonald. You can say what you want to say. It's all right. But you see, I see our relationship with Israel at this crossroad, and I warned President Trump tonight. I love President Trump. I respect him. I believe the country's headed in the right direction. But these issues that deal with Israel, I don't know what it is, folks, about that nation. I know what the Bible says, and I'm fully versed on what Israel's future is. We're studying it in the mornings, every morning on our Bible study. I get it. I understand God's plan for her in the future. I understand her immediate travail. I understand I know what her past and history has been. She's wandered for God for nearly 2,000 years and really longer, and she's never ever fully served God. She's never fully come into that right relationship with Him as a nation. And one day she will, but she's just never been there, and she's just not there tonight. But there is something about this nation that God has had His hand on from the days of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that has never changed. That has never changed. And when He told Abraham that infamous day when He said, I will bless them that bless you and I will curse them that curse you. That promise has stayed true, neighbor, for 4,000 years. Kingdoms have come and gone. Tyrants have come and gone. Despots have come and gone. Governments have come and gone. World leaders have come and gone that have tried to eradicate this race. They have tried to eradicate the nation of Israel. These Arab nations have tried to destroy her since 1948. They have tried every way, and twice on Sunday. They tried it again on October the 7th. This Hamas terrorist group was funded by Iran and probably other nations in the Middle East. It was not just a little group, isolated group. This was a concentrated effort of hell to destroy this nation again. And yet they remain tonight. But when you look at history and you look at this boat called the St. Louis, named after the heartland of our country. St. Louis is right in the heartland of our country. It's a beautiful city. The golden arches. You see those arches, and when you see them, it's like the separation between the eastern part of the country and the west. Once you pass St. Louis, you're basically out into the plains, and you're headed to the Rockies on to California. That arch is sort of the central point of our country. And I think about this ship as being the dividing line and the plumb line between how we handled things 86 years ago, and I look at us tonight, how we're handling things, and we're not doing much better. And I don't know if you heard about this. I'm just going to read this story to you, and then I'm going to wrap this up a little bit tonight. I got a lot more I wanted to share tonight, but we're out of time. I really wanted to talk to Jeemes tonight, and I'm glad he came on. We'll pick this up more Thursday night. But there was a New York school bus driver that has been suspended. This just came out today. This was out of the World Israel News. This was not in our American media, by the way. I got this off the Jerusalem news sites. But a New York City school bus driver was suspended after holding children captive while engaging in a religious tirade that blamed the Jews for Jesus' death. Outraged parents said that the children, who were students at Brooklyn Prospect International Elementary School, were over 30 minutes late to school as the driver held the students on the bus and rambled about the Jews' role in Jesus' execution. He said, "The only one that can deliver you isn't religion, it's Jesus," he told the children. Yes, Jesus was a Jew, and basically Jews his own killed him. They basically killed him because he said he was the Son of God, and all that's correct. These were religious leaders who killed him. That's correct. But he never puts this in context. He said there was at least one Jewish student on the bus who was said to have been driven to tears by the driver's remarks. And the driver reportedly said that Jesus died for their sins, and if we believe in him, he will be saved. A parent added that the driver told the children that the only one who can free you all is Jesus Christ. And I'm not disagreeing with the thing the bus driver said, but he was doing it, folks. This is why the Jews have a hard time with us Christians. They was basically blaming the Jews for the death of Christ. So he didn't put himself in that equation when he said, the Jews, you killed Jesus. No, he should have said, I killed Jesus. Because this bus driver killed Jesus. We all killed Jesus. There wasn't a one of us that didn't have a role in his crucifixion. There's not a one of us that whose sin didn't put him on that cross. But see, the Christian church and the Christian community has taken this self-righteous attitude, and we have blamed the Jews for everything. We have blamed the Jews for everything. And the Brooklyn Prospect International Elementary School said it has filed a complaint with the bus driver's employer and requested a new driver for the route. And he literally stopped the bus for a period of time to make these remarks and distribute this to the kids. And then it's basically said that he distributed hats and so forth. And look, I'm not disagreeing with what the man said in principle, because I preach that every Sunday. I tell the Jews and the Gentiles. I get accused of pushing Judaism, and God forbid, we don't push anything but Christ and Him crucified, folks. We're writing a book right now called We Preach Christ Crucified. We're in the initial stages of it. And we preach a gospel that means that both Jew and Gentile must come the same way. But this anti-Semitism and this Jew hatred has gotten an apex. It has gotten to a crescendo to this nation that everywhere we turn, some of this stuff in Seattle that happened this weekend was anti-Semitic. It was laced with anti-Semitism. These college campuses, Harvard, and let me come back over here. I'm going to come over to our newswire because I got a story or two before I go tonight I want to share with you. Let me tell you this, folks. All this anti-Semitism, Jews are getting blamed. It's almost like what happened in Nazi Germany. See, when the Jews got sent back, the ship, it was like a domino. It was like Hitler. It was like he was released, and the world basically told Hitler without saying a word, without even having to tell him, do what you want to him. We're not going to stand in your way. And you know, I mentioned this on the Bible study this morning. We have 15 million Jews in this entire world. Do you realize that? 15 million. Why is that figure important? Of all the Jews in Europe, 939 Jews, what would have it hurt the United States of America to take in 939 Jewish refugees? It's amazing that the same people that turned that boat away would be the same group today that would be pushing for rapists, murderers, gangbangers, drug pushers, fentanyl pushers, pedophiles, and child traffickers to come into the country without question. But the Jews wanted to come in for safety in 1939. It's the same group that turned them away then would have turned them away tonight. Same principle going on when these white farmers from South Africa wanted to come in. The Dems are raising you-know-what about the white African farmers coming in, but they're not raising Cain about the fentanyl pushers coming in. 15 million people total out of a 8 billion population. That's 0.195, which comes to 0.2% of the world's population. Just 0.2% of the population of the entire world is Jewish. But yet we're to believe tonight, by these anti-Semitic voices and by these anti-Semites on X and Rumble and Telegram and the television stations and the college campuses of Harvard and Columbia and Northwestern. We've got a young lady we're praying will come on our show. She's doing a research project on how Northwestern hired a anti-Israel planner. And I do want to talk about that a minute because I want to deal with a couple of things tonight. This is a story out of the World Israel News, but this was actually on our X page today. But a Northwestern University professor, Jessica Kostaku is her name. She's with the Washington Free Beacon. They hired this professor as part of a deal with anti-Israel groups to end last year's encampment. He sits on the board of two organizations that were founded by and frequently partnered with Palestinian terrorists. Last year, Northwestern President Michael Schrill struck a deal with radical student groups, including Students for Justice in Palestine, to end their encampment, agreeing to recruit 2 Palestinian professors and provide full rides to 5 students from Gaza. Northwestern tapped Mukarram Abu-Sada last fall as a visiting associate professor of political science. Wouldn't you love to sit on in on that class? To fill the first of these faculty slots, teaching a weekly undergraduate course on, quote, the Palestinian National Movement. I'm sure you Northwestern parents are real thrilled your kids were learning that. Abu Sadas also served on the boards of 2 other organizations, the Independent Commission for Human Rights and the Palestinian Center for Human Rights. He has praised, both these groups have praised Hamas, met with terror groups, including Ismail Haniyeh, while PCHR has Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine members on its payroll. And basically what it's saying here, folks, is that Northwestern cut a deal with the devil and basically hiring him was in the face of Trump that had cut $790 million in federal funding to Northwestern amid a civil rights investigation into alleged anti-Semitism and racial discrimination on campus. By the way, the ICHR was founded by the former terrorist of all terrorists, Palestinian Liberation Organization Chairman Yasser Arafat, whom Romanowski described as, quote, the grandfather of all terrorists. The group purports to ensure that the State of Palestine and Palestine Liberation Organization meet the requirements for safeguarding human rights. Now, I've got a reason for saying all this, so bear with me. It's a long article. We've got this in our Telegram room. We encourage you to visit us there. That's just one thing tonight. Trump is basically taken away all of Harvard's funding tonight. He's ready to take them to the Supreme Court. There's Leo Terrell. He's a great guy. He is out there pushing right now for a full defunding of Harvard's international grants. And he said, we have tolerated anti-Semitism for the last 4 years. Thank goodness President Trump is in office. He won't tolerate it. He's going to eliminate it. That's why I'm in this role now. That's why Pam Bondi is the Attorney General and Harmit Dillon is the Civil Rights Head. And Trump said today that he's willing to go to the Supreme Court to see to it that Harvard gets no other dime. On the back of this, I want to talk about this real quick. We're right at an hour and 28 minutes. Bear with me. I'm going to go about 10 more minutes if I can. Cindy McCain, the wife of the late loser John McCain, she heads up the United Nations World Food Program. And she was over the weekend claiming that the Gaza food shortages was Israel's fault, not Hamas's. And she says that she has seen no evidence that Israel claimed that Hamas was disrupting the aid of the distribution process was true. And Israel is vehemently disagreeing with her tonight, and they said that they just killed 6 armed individuals this weekend affiliated with Hamas. Near an aid distribution center near Kareem Shalom crossing point on Friday, Hamas officials said the individuals were guarding against looters. Israel officials say they were doing just the opposite. She said that Hamas has no way to loot the trucks. And she says, and Brennan, the CBS crap reporter, Constant Bullshit Network, says, have you seen evidence that it is Hamas stealing the food? She says, no, not at all. Not on this round. Listen, these people are desperate, and they see a World Food Program truck come in, and they run for it. They don't have anything that doesn't have anything to do with Hamas or any other kind of organized crime or anything, she said. That is a catastrophe. The few trucks that have been let inside Gaza are a drop in the bucket as to what's needed. Right now, we have 500,000 people inside of Gaza that are extremely food insecure and could be on the verge of famine if we don't help them bring them back from that. I want to remind Ms. McCain of something tonight. I want to play this video for you. I want you to understand these are Gazans shouting slogans toward Hamas because Hamas is stealing their food.
Rolling the tape. الصور تأتينا من رفح للآلاف كما نشاهد في هذه الصور باتجاه المساعدات التي بدأ بعضها ربما يدخل إلى القطاع بعد فشل الشركة الأمريكية في السيطرة على عملية التوسيع. نذكر بأن هناك شركات أمريكية هيمن في إطار صيغة التي تم الاتفاق عليها بإدخال المساعدات المسموح بها حتى الآن إلى قطاع غزة. يبدو أن هناك فشل من قبل الشركة.
Now you're not understanding a word he's saying, and neither am I. But what he's basically saying there, folks, is that the Gazans understand who's stealing their food, and I can tell you it's not Israel. They know Hamas is doing it. By the way, who's to blame for this that you see on the screen right there? That's Gaza, folks. That's Gaza. Who's to blame for that? Who's to blame for that, Cindy McCain? Who's to blame for nearly these 500,000 Gazans being hungry? Let me tell you who's to blame, Cindy McCain. It ain't Israel. We wouldn't have had 500,000 Gazans looking for food and scouring and running around like rats and dogs. And I'm not saying they're rats and dogs, but running around like a dog looking for food on a hot summer day. Had Hamas not done what they did on October the 7th, you wouldn't have the hellhole that Gaza has become. But the media and people like Cindy McCain and prophets and teachers and Telegram listeners are pushing this tonight and claiming that Israel is the one starving Gazans to death, when it is Hamas, and it is organizations like Hamas, and it is organizations that are infiltrating our campuses, and the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian people, folks, and don't confabulate the leadership and the people, because I don't hold either one less accountable. And I tell you why. The Palestinian people chose their leaders. The people of Gaza chose Hamas to lead them. They chose Hamas. And they are without excuse. The Americans are doing as much as we can. President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu, even yesterday, we played a video, I think Friday night, and Israel has launched the greatest humanitarian effort to get food to the Gazans, but they're making sure this food gets to the people. Cindy McCain should be ashamed of herself for going on CBS News and claiming to this network that she has never seen no evidence or not seen any evidence that Hamas is hindering the food distribution in the Gaza Strip. That is absolutely insane. She's about as nutty as her daughter and about as crazy and demonically evil as her husband was, her late husband. I don't know where John McCain's soul is tonight. He never exhibited faith to my knowledge, but I will tell you what, John McCain is realizing in eternity, wherever he's at, that Israel is on God's mind. And I'm going to say this tonight, folks, as I close. You got 0.2% of the world's population being labeled as the devil. 0.2. Put it 0.2. There are 1.5 billion Muslims on this earth. That is more than 10% of the world's population. 10% of 8 billion is 800 million. Think about that. There's not but 15 million Jews. That's all. 1.5 billion Muslims, though. The world has been convinced by the devil and anti-Semitic prophets and teachers and network hosts and other ex-personalities and YouTube sensations and former Fox hosts and former darlings of the conservative movement that the source of all the evil in the world, the source of all evil, you've got some nut out there who I know telling the world that the only pedophilia that is in the world is found in Israel, that there's no other nation in the world that pedophiles exist except Israel. That's demonic deception, folks. That's demonic deception. See, you can't fix that with a book. I can't fix that by screaming and yelling and jumping up and down. That is a demonic fog that is on people's hearts and mind that cannot be fixed no matter what you say to people. I've tried. I've tried. But I will tell you this tonight. That 0.2% of that population, when the smoke clears, that 0.2% of the population won't be the source of the world's evil. It's going to be the source of the world's greatest blessing to come. Because it is through this people that the Christ came that saved this entire world. You see, what that bus driver did in New York, there were elements of what he said to tell those kids that was true, but he was doing it in a way that the church has missed the message that we need to be a witness to Israel. But you don't do it by bringing kids to tears and telling them you killed Jesus. Because that is exactly what the Nazis did, folks, as they were sending them to the camps. Do you realize that? That same rhetoric, that same terminology is what the Germans used to the Jews. They were gassing them to death, screaming at them, Christ killers, Christ killers, Christ killers, Christ killers. The Germans would play Silent Night as they would march around the camps at Christmas time. Ashes of the people going up. Many of them from that boat of the St. Louis that was basically taken back to the western coast of France and dispersed, never to be seen again. Never to be seen again. We got a choice, folks. Been telling this to my Bible students. Told them this morning. I'm going to tell it to them again. You better be on the right side of this now. You better determine what side you're going to be on. I've already made my decision. And I'm proud of it. And if you think out there that McDonald here, McDonald's, just something about us McDonald's, we get stubborn about something, you can ask my dear wife. We hard to deal with. She loves me through my stubbornness, but she knows. My family knows, and McDonald's, we get a streak in us, and this is worth getting stubborn over and being hard-headed about. Because, see, I'm on the right side of this. And I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my soul, and I feel it in my spirit tonight that I'm on the right side of history, and I'm on the right side of the Lord with this. Israel is going to be saved, folks, at the end, and Israel will be here at the end of this. It may not look like it right now. It may not seem like it. And I'm going to say this to my news audience tonight, just like I said it to my Bible students. If you're out there sharing anti-Semitic posts, and you're out there sharing anti-Semitic things, and you're out there sharing this Jew hate, and this Jew slur, and this Jew slander, and this blood libel is what it's called. You want to share blood libel, you go ahead and share it. You're just as guilty. You're just as guilty as every anti-Semite in every turn of history that has ever raised a hand to hurt the Jewish people for no other reason than them being Jews. You're probably in worse shape than they are. The water carriers are always the worst. Let me tell you this as I close tonight. I don't know where America's going to be with Israel at the end. I wish I could tell you that. I can't. You know, we talked about it this morning. I really encourage you to be with us. Faith Network, 9 to 10, 10 to 11 usually in the mornings. There is no way to tell where America's going to be in prophecy down the road. Nowhere to tell. I know where Israel's going to be. And she's got hell to go through to get there. But she's going to be standing at the end. It would suffice the American people and the American government to get on the right side of this equation. And it would behoove us Christians to get on the right side and start acting like Jesus. And you say, well, the bus driver said a lot of right things. He said a lot of right things, but he was not acting like Christ when he did it. Because Christ, when he comes back to Israel, they're going to ask him, where did you get these marks? He don't condemn them. He's not going to scream at them and say, you Christ killers. He's simply going to hold his hands up. And he says, I got these in the house of my friends. You realize how powerful a statement that is. You know what that lets me know tonight? That for those that would come to him tonight in faith, I don't care whether it be Jew or Gentile, being that we all put those marks in his hands. He's forgiven us. When he prayed, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. He meant that prayer. We say that many times in our vainness, and we don't really mean it. We just say it to say words. But he meant it. And the true believer means it when they say it. But the true believer in Jesus is not going to be a sharer of slander and a sharer of blood libel. And we're going to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And we're going to pray for our government here. And we're going to be Americans. And we're going to love our people. And we're going to love each other. We're going to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We're going to realize our only friend in the Middle East is that little tiny nation over the other side of Rhode Island. And we're going to realize that there are more internally important things than being right on Telegram and having an audience on X and to push falsehood and slander and lies and blood libel of the enemy and be a blood carrier and have blood on our hands when it gets to the end. Now, you don't have to agree with that. I say that a lot these days. These opinions are mine. And I will stay with them until this show ends, whatever day that comes and may come. But I will tell you as of right now, if the Lord lets me do it, it won't come until the day you see me 6 feet under. Because I plan to go out doing exactly what I'm doing, no matter who's out there. And that's what I got to say tonight. All right. I'm almost done. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Any quick questions? Any thoughts? Any thoughts? 1975. There you go, Cleo. 1.1975% of the world's total population is the Jewish people. Their total numbers were higher prior to World War II. Isn't that amazing? Any statements tonight? 87%. It's amazing. It's just absolutely crazy. We had 85 votes in our poll tonight. Is the country on the right track? 87 to 13. We did this poll in Telegram. Would you believe that the totals in the Telegram room are actually the same thing, except in the news channel, they're 96 to 4. In the regular channel, it's 87 to 13. How about that? 87 to 13. Now, I'm going to ask you, those that don't think the country's on the right track, McFiles4 at gmail.com. You tell me why the country's on the wrong track. I'd like to know. And you tell me what you believe the country can do better to get us on the right track. If you don't believe the country's on the right track, don't just say it and throw it out there or be a stooge just to put a vote out there because you hate Trump. And Trump's tweets is not why the country's on the wrong track. But tell me why the country's on the wrong track. And please tell me what you don't think Trump's doing or should be doing to get us on the right track. And I'll leave that up to you. All right. Any quick things? I got to quit. I've been going longer than I thought I would tonight. Did you enjoy the show tonight? Put some fire in that house if you did. I'm going to end the poll. 8713, almost identical. It was identical to that. Isn't that crazy? Good to see you, Tim Neal. I thought it was a great show tonight, too. I'm being diplomatic, folks. I could post stuff people are saying and create a firestorm between here and Nova Scotia. Of course, I ain't going to do that. No, I'm going to let these anti-Semites dig their own grave. I really am. I've warned gently. I've tried to be as forceful as I can on our network, and people come and go and come and go. They sneak in, and this is what he's saying, and they go back, and it's okay. It's okay. Chris ain't going to change. I ain't going to change because I know I'm on the right side of this. You better be on the right side of it too. And I mean that tonight with everything in me. Because eternity's a long time, folks. And if we don't get it right here, I can tell you, you're not going to get it right up there. It's too late to get it right up there. And we better get it right. This has eternal consequences for us all. It does. It really does tonight. Tim, thank you. Good to see you, buddy. All you folks in Facebook tonight, thank you for being with us tonight. All of you. Dennis, good to see you. Anna, Jeannie, good to see you, friend. Looking forward to seeing you guys up in New England. I appreciate you being here tonight. And good to see Gail, Joanne. Let's see who else we had. Corey was in there earlier tonight. Roger Hooker, good to see you. Lucy, good to see you, dear. Jimmy Lemon, Susie Morris is in the house tonight. And man, good stuff, huh? Good stuff tonight. And thank you all for being with us tonight. Anyway, Carol Smith, do you think when Gaza war ends, anti-Semitism may get worse, not less? Carol, the hatred of the Jews is going to get worse. Nothing will stop this train that's going on right now. It's raging. I am shocked at some of the voices. And I'm not talking about these wannabe prophets or these people that are just out there for attention and they've got no following. And even if they've got a following, it's so minuscule when you think about the bigger picture and the population of the country and the world. I'm talking about like major market people that have millions of followers. I'm not talking a few thousand. I'm talking millions of followers that are pushing this blood libel. Network people. Magazines. Networks. Churches. I'm shocked. I shouldn't be. Not too much can shock Chris anymore. But again, I can't to throw names out there. Y'all can go find the quotes. It's out there. It's not hard to find. All you gotta do is Google it. And when you see some of the stuff that comes up, you'll understand. But let me just remind you that it's a pretty sick thing to believe that just 0.2% of the population of the entire world could be the source of all the evil in it. You got to be a pretty demented person to believe that, don't you? And it's demonic. James Akers said it tonight. It is a demonic force over the world tonight that's convincing the world of that. And we better come to grips with it. It's not Israel, folks. It's their enemies that want us to. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless this great nation of America. I will see you back here in the morning. We'll do this again. Tomorrow's Faith Day. And we'll pick this up Thursday night on our new side. Thank you for being with me tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. McFilesforum@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think I would tonight. I hope I do. Pray for Bibi Netanyahu, folks. Pray for Israel. Pray for America. Pray for President Trump. As James said tonight, I don't think any of us would not want to know what's happening if Kamala Harris was in power right now. Good Lord have mercy. We may already be nuked. But President Trump needs to be very, very careful right now how he walks this mine. And we need to pray for wisdom for our president. And I mean that very seriously because I love him. I don't say this because I don't like him. I love him. I love President Trump. I mean, I've never had a president in my lifetime like him. And we're going to be privileged when we get past this, if the Lord tarries, and we look back on these 8 years that he's been in office. We're going to look back on this. And look, I think the 4 years of Biden maybe shook some people up. I thought it would. that we look at the two presidencies and what we had at Biden and what we had in Trump. And that's also demonic because people don't see the difference. They don't think there's any difference. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. And going forward, I think the choice is going to be on America. Well, how do we want to go forward? Do we want to go back to what we just came out of, or do we want to keep going on the right track? Because as far as I'm concerned, we're on the right track. He's got some landmines. Israel's going to be a biggie, and we need to pray for him in the worst of ways. May the Lord bless you tonight. I appreciate you all. I really do. Have a good night, everybody. If you got something out of the show, put some fire in that house. Be blessed out there. Good night, everybody.